You think when she finally opens up and tells you how she feels, it means you're getting closer. But what if those words aren't vulnerability? What if they're warning signs you're ignoring because you want the story to be different? Listen, there are 5 specific statements that sound like honesty, like progress, like intimacy, but they're actually announcements of disrespect. And the reason most men stay after hearing them is because they've been conditioned to believe that patience equals strength and tolerance equals love. It doesn't. Patience without boundaries is self-abandonment. Tolerance of disrespect is participation in your own eraser. And today, we're going to identify the exact phrases that should trigger an immediate, non-negotiable exit. Not out of anger, not out of ego, but out of self-respect and clarity about what you will and will not accept in your life. Before we go further, do yourself a favor and subscribe to this channel. Not because I need you to, because you need the reminder. You need a voice in your feed that isn't going to coddle you or sell you fantasy. You need content that tells you the truth even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because that's the only way you grow. Hit subscribe. You'll thank yourself later. You hear that, and you think she's being honest. You think she's doing the mature thing by communicating her emotional availability. And on the surface, sure, it sounds reasonable. But here's what that statement actually means. 99% of the red flag, nor one. She disrespects your ambitions time. I'm not ready for a relationship with you. Because if the right person showed up tomorrow, the person who triggered that chemical cocktail of attraction, respect, and fascination, she'd be ready. She'd find the time. She'd make the space. She'd reorganize her entire life if necessary. You've seen it happen. You've watched women who swore they needed to focus on themselves suddenly dive headfirst into something new with someone else. It wasn't about readiness, it was about desire. So when she tells you she's not ready, what she's really saying is, you're not compelling enough to make me want to rearrange my priorities. And that's fine. That's her prerogative. But your response should not be to wait around like a backup option. Your response should not be to prove yourself harder, to become more accommodating, to shrink your needs further. Your response should be to believe her and walk. Because even if she is telling the technical truth, even if she genuinely isn't ready, it doesn't matter. You don't build a life waiting for someone to become ready for you. You build a life with someone who sees you and says, yes, now you. The cost of staying is this: you become a placeholder. You exist in her life as an emotional accessory, a source of attention and validation, but never the priority. You give her the benefits of your presence without the commitment she'd have to offer in return, and the longer you stay, the more you teach her that your boundaries are negotiable, that your time is elastic, that your self-respect has a price, and that price is her inconsistent affection. Here's the reframe. When someone shows you they're not invested, that's not a challenge to overcome. That's information to act on. Walking away isn't giving up. It's refusing to negotiate your value. It's saying, I'm not interested in potential. I'm not interested in someday. I'm interested in presence, in reciprocity, in someone who matches my effort without needing to be convinced. This one's tricky because it masquerades as self-awareness. She's taking responsibility for her confusion. She's creating distance to gain clarity. That sounds healthy, right? Except here's what I need space actually translates to. I want to keep my options open while I explore other possibilities, and I need you to stay on standby in case those don't work out. Real clarity doesn't require space from someone you're genuinely invested in. Real clarity happens in communication, in transparency, in working through confusion together if the relationship matters. But when someone asks for red flag them too, she constantly plays the victim space. What they're usually asking for is freedom from accountability while maintaining access to you. They want the leash long enough to roam, but short enough to pull you back when convenient. And what do most men do? They give her space. They wait. They stay available. They text every few days just to check in. They convince themselves that respecting her request proves their maturity. But all it proves is that you're willing to let someone deprioritize you without consequence. You become the safety net, the known quantity, the boring stability she'll return to once the excitement elsewhere fizzles out. Here's the truth. If she needs space from you, give her permanent space, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as a boundary. Because you are not a draft she can revise. You are not a bookmark she can return to when she's finished reading other chapters. You are a complete, whole, valuable human being who deserves someone certain about you. And uncertainty, when it lasts longer than a conversation, is just cowardice dressed up as introspection. The man who understands his worth doesn't wait in the wings. He doesn't pause his life while someone else decides if he's good enough. He keeps moving. He invests in himself, in his purpose, in people who are clear about wanting him in their life. And if she comes back later, maybe he's still available, maybe he's not. But either way, he hasn't spent the interim in emotional purgatory. This one sounds like humility, like she's acknowledging your value, but it's not a compliment. It's a preemptive dismissal. It's her way of saying, I know I'm going to hurt you, and I'm telling you now so that when I do, you can't say you weren't warned. When a woman tells you you're too good for her, believe her, not because you actually are, because compatibility isn't a hierarchy, but because she's telling you she has no intention of rising to meet you. She's comfortable with her patterns. She's aware of her behavior. And instead of choosing to change, she's choosing to disqualify herself while making it sound noble. This is manipulation disguised as self-awareness. Because now, if you stay and she treats you poorly, it's partially on you. She told you. She was honest. You chose to ignore the warning, and that's exactly the trap. She gets to misbehave with a clear conscience because she gave you the disclaimer up front. Most men hear, "You're too good for me," and double down. They try to prove that she is good enough. They reassure her. They lower their standards to match her self-perception. And in doing so, they validate her cop-out. They become complicit in their own diminishment. Here's what you do instead. You agree. You're right. I am. And then you leave not cruelly, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because someone who genuinely believed they weren't good enough for you would either work to become better or step aside to let you find someone who is. They wouldn't ask you to accept less while framing it as their inadequacy. The cost of staying after hearing this is that you'll forever be managing her guilt and your disappointment. You'll be performing emotional labor to convince her she's worthy while she performs minimal effort in return. And eventually, you'll resent her for the imbalance, and she'll resent you for making her feel inadequate. It's a lose-lose built on a foundation of her refusal to take responsibility. This is the statement that ends. Red flag number 3. She refuses accountability relationships while trying to soften the blow. She's attempting to let you down easy by creating a distinction that doesn't actually exist in functional partnerships. Because here's the reality. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Means I care about you, I'm used to you, maybe I even appreciate you, but I'm not attracted to you anymore. I don't desire you, and I'm not willing to do the work to rebuild that. Love without being in love is friendship. It's fondness. It's history. And none of those things are enough to sustain a romantic relationship. What she's saying is, you've become safe, predictable, comfortable, and none of that excites me. The polarity is gone, the tension is gone, and instead of working to recreate it, I'm going to frame this as a mysterious emotional shift that neither of us can control. But it's not mysterious. Attraction fades when one or both people stop growing, stop challenging each other, stop maintaining their individuality. It fades when comfort replaces passion, and routine replaces presence. And yes, sometimes that's mutual. Sometimes relationships run their course. But when she phrases it as, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, she's making it sound like an inevitability rather than a choice. And that removes her accountability. Your job is not to convince her to fall back in love with you. Your job is not to perform harder, to become more romantic, to recreate the early days. Your job is to recognize that she's telling you it's over and that she's hoping you'll do the heavy lifting of the breakup so she doesn't have to feel like the bad guy. Walk away not because you're hurt, though you will be, but because staying in a relationship where you're loved like a pet instead of desired like a partner is a slow death. It's the erosion of your self-respect one day at a time. It's waking up next to someone who tolerates you instead of chooses you, and you deserve better than tolerance. The man who values himself doesn't beg for desire. He doesn't negotiate for attraction. He doesn't try to logic someone into wanting him. He simply says, I understand. And he walks because he knows that the right person won't need to differentiate between love and being in love. The right person will feel both fully without caveat. This is gaslighting. Full stop. When a woman tells you you're overreacting to something she did or said, she's attempting to rewrite reality. She's telling you that your perception is wrong, that your feelings are invalid, that the problem isn't her behavior, it's your response to it. And if you accept that framing, you'll spend the red flag number 4. She uses manipulation tactics, rest of the relationship questioning yourself instead of holding her accountable. Here's the pattern. You bring up something that hurt you. You explain why it matters. And instead of acknowledging your perspective, instead of taking responsibility, instead of engaging with your actual concern, she deflects. She minimizes. She tells you you're too sensitive, too emotional, too insecure. And now the conversation isn't about what she did. It's about what's supposedly wrong with you. This is a control tactic because if she can convince you that your reactions are the problem, she never has to change her actions. If she can make you doubt your own perceptions, she can continue behaving however she wants without consequence. And over time, you stop bringing things up. You stop trusting your instincts. You start accepting treatment you know is wrong because you've been conditioned to believe the fault is yours. Let me be clear. Your feelings are data. They're information. They might not always be accurate. Emotions can be influenced by past wounds, by projection, by misunderstanding, but they're never irrelevant. And a partner who respects you will engage with your feelings even if they don't fully understand them. They'll say, "Help me see what you're seeing." They'll ask questions. They'll seek to understand. They won't dismiss you. So when she tells you you're overreacting, that's your cue to leave. Not eventually, not after one more chance, immediately. Because someone who invalidates your reality is someone who will never take responsibility for hurting you. And a relationship without accountability is just exploitation with affection sprinkled on top. The cost of staying is that you lose yourself. You become smaller, quieter, more careful. You start filtering your thoughts and emotions through the lens of whether she'll accept them as valid. And that's not intimacy. That's captivity. Now, let's talk about the man who doesn't tolerate any of these 5 statements. Let's talk about the person you become when you enforce real boundaries. This man knows his value is not determined by someone else's ability to see it. He doesn't audition for love. He doesn't perform for approval. He doesn't twist himself into shapes to fit someone else's dysfunction. He's grounded. He's purpose-driven. He has a life that matters to him independent of any relationship. And he protects that life fiercely. When someone tells him they're not ready, he doesn't wait. He believes them and moves forward. When someone asks for space, he gives them all of it permanently. When someone says he's too good for them, he agrees and walks. When someone claims to love him but isn't in love, he recognizes the relationship is over and acts accordingly. And when someone tells him he's overreacting, he understands that his reality is being red flag. The murderer 5. She doesn't support your growth challenged. And he exits the situation without defending himself. This man doesn't argue, doesn't plead, doesn't try to change anyone's mind because he understands that people who want to be with you don't need to be convinced. They don't need time. They don't need space. They don't need disclaimers. They just show up consistently, clearly, without ambiguity. And here's what happens when you become that man. You stop attracting people who are confused about you. You stop entertaining relationships that require constant negotiation. You start drawing in people who are certain, who are ready, who see you and recognize immediately that you're not someone to play games with. Your energy shifts, your standards rise, and your life improves dramatically because you're no longer spending emotional resources on people who don't value them. So here's what you do right now today, moving forward. Stop accepting words without action. Stop giving people credit for potential. Stop staying in situations that require you to shrink. If someone tells you any of these 5 statements, you thank them for their honesty and you walk. No dramatics, no big speech, no attempt to get the last word. You just leave because your presence is a privilege and you're done granting it to people who don't treat it that way. Redirect your energy toward your mission, toward your growth, toward building a life so compelling that uncertainty from others doesn't even register as a blip. You become so clear about who you are and what you're building that anyone not aligned simply falls away without effort. And you start practicing the word no. No, I'm not waiting. No, I'm not staying in limbo. No, I'm not accepting blame for your behavior. No, I'm not negotiating my boundaries. That word becomes your anchor, your protection, your declaration of self-respect. Here's the truth they don't tell you. You are not the problem. Your standards are not the problem. Your desire for clarity, consistency, and respect is not the problem. The problem is that you've been taught to accommodate people who don't accommodate you. You've been taught that walking away is quitting when in reality, it's often the most powerful move you can make. You are the answer. You are the solution. The moment you stop looking, final thoughts. Choose yourself and walk away for external validation and start enforcing internal standards. Everything changes. You stop being the man things happen to and become the man who decides what he will and will not experience. You stop being reactive and become intentional. And that shift, that single shift in posture, transforms every area of your life. So if you needed permission to walk away from someone who's told you any of these 5 things, here it is. Walk. Not because she's a bad person, not because you're punishing her, but because you're honoring yourself, because you're choosing reality over fantasy, because you're refusing to build a future on a foundation of disrespect. And if you want more of this, more truth, more call to action, transform your life. Today, clarity, more reminders that you're not crazy for expecting better. Subscribe to this channel. Make it a habit. Let this be the place you come to recalibrate when the world tries to convince you that tolerating less is somehow noble. It's not. It's self-betrayal. And you're done with that. You're part of a community now. A community of men who are committed to becoming the best version of themselves, who refuse to settle, who understand that respect isn't negotiable and that self-worth isn't up for debate.